Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Chris. I'm a musician based in the Los Angeles area and I consider myself a menswear enthusiast. So if either of these things are of interest to you, hit that subscribe button below so you're able to see more of these in the future. Now, little bit of a different angle. I'm here off to the side a little more so in this video, and you can see the shirts here behind me. It's because today I'm going to be comparing business shirts, as people in the UK like to call it, and here in the Americas we tend to call them dress shirts. Wanted to be clear about that because I know dress shirts in the UK tend to be considered more with the absolute formal wear, like with black tie and white tie. So wanted to make sure that that was clear. And the reason I'm talking about business shirts today is because I want to talk about cheap and inexpensive dress shirts today. Business shirts, I should say. And why do I want to talk about this? Well, because a majority of my wardrobe is either cheap or inexpensive. And I wanted to give you all this perspective of mine today based on my experience of having owned all these cheap and inexpensive shirts. We all have somewhere to start. Let's be honest, none of us are made, I shouldn't say none of us, but I should say not a lot of us have the means to be able to get all the expensive stuff out of the gate. So I want to be able to bring forth to you all my perspective on cheap versus inexpensive. So what do I consider cheap and what do I consider inexpensive? Of course, these are going to be my definitions. The dictionary definition isn't going to do quite enough. Cheaply made items tend to be made out of material that generally won't stand the test of time, or they just aren't well made. They are poorly made and eventually fall apart over time. And unfortunately, that also means that some more expensive products can also be cheaply made. Definitely gonna call out designer brands, not by name, but designer brands notoriously aren't the most well-made things out there. And then of course you have inexpensive, which it generally tends to be well-made for a lower price. Is it going to be top quality? Absolutely not. Top quality for a business shirt, you're probably looking well over $100 because of material costs and labor costs, which are the biggest contributors to the price of any item. And to make it even better, I'm going to compare it to saxophones, seeing as that is my primary instrument and I can really talk well to this topic. A cheap saxophone, considerably, there aren't very many cheap saxophones out there, but the ones that you will find that are cheap tend to be in the sub $2,000 range. And they also tend to be Chinese made. They're also not made out of the best brass. They don't have a lot of handwork put into them. They are generally put together by machines. So you tell me if it's going to be well made. Now compare that to a top end saxophone, which is around, I'm going to average right around $4,000 or more. I don't expect a $4,000+ saxophone to be made by machines. It just won't play as well and it won't last as long. Now let's talk about an inexpensive variety, which is actually what's considered the intermediate variety. I talked about student models and I talked about professional models. I talked about the opposite ends of the spectrum. Now I'm going to talk about what's smack in the middle. Smack in the middle, intermediate, is, I would consider an intermediate quality horn to be made out of better materials than the student horn. Still not quite as well made as the pro horn, or may not have the best materials, but it is right in the middle, and it's usually anywhere between that $2,000 to $3,000 range. But enough dilly-dallying on semantics. We're here to talk about my shirts and my experience with these business shirts over my last however many years. So right here in front, we have 3 shirts that I continue to keep in my wardrobe. One of them I'm eventually going to get rid of because I'm starting to not necessarily like the color as much. I do have a couple of ties that do still continue to work with it, but eventually I'm going to get rid of this shirt because it's just too dark. And then on the other end, I have three of my latest shirt purchases. These ones here in front are from Men's Wearhouse, and I know they were from Men's Wearhouse. My dad had this green shirt for a long time, got it from Men's Wearhouse. And then I personally have had these two shirts from Men's Wearhouse. This one is the most recent one. This one was when I first got my suits. On the other end, I have two shirts. Here on this end, the black one, and the check shirt, the purple check shirt. I'm not sure if you can see the checks on it. But those are from Charles Tyrwhitt. And then here on this end is actually one of my white poplin Ledbury shirts. The other one, you're actually seeing me wear right now. Now, my intent here with this video isn't to, and pardon my language, shit all over Men's Wearhouse, since, like I said, I started at Men's Wearhouse in 2016, though I'm here to talk about why Men's Wearhouse shouldn't be your first stop to getting quality menswear, quality shirts. And while we're on the topic of Men's Wearhouse, let's dive right into my Men's Wearhouse shirts. Now, I got all of these in store, and most of them were starting around $70 and usually went up to $90. Sometimes they were a little more expensive. Now, while I'm still on the note of price, a couple of things. I usually got these on a 3 for $99 bundle, meaning 3 shirts for $99. And lately, when I checked their website, it seems like they're offering their shirts for no more than $70. And I personally think part of that is from the pandemic and the fact that they've had to cut the price tag on their clothing so that way they're able to regain some of the profits they lost from the last however long they've been closed. A couple of big pointers I want to make about my Men's Wearhouse shirts in particular, minus my Joseph Abboud shirt that my dad handed to me. The collars just generally are stubbier. If I were to close the collars, well actually you could probably just see here how big the wingspan on this green Abboud collar is. Now compare it to the collar here on the Calvin Klein shirt and here on the Kenneth Cole A-Wear-ness shirt. You can clearly see what has a much wider wingspan. And a big thing that I started going towards quality shirts over the shirts that are offered at Men's Wearhouse is the collars. Not just for how tall they aren't, but another big reason, which is that these collars are actually very flimsy. Like, you see how much I'm collapsing the collar here? This one's definitely a little stiffer, so this one's acting better. Let's look at my Calvin Klein shirt. See how much I'm just finagling with this collar? I'm folding it left, right, all over the place. And honestly, on a quality shirt, you can't do that. For example, let's look at my Ledbury shirt. You can see how I'm trying to collapse my collar, though my collar is actually resisting getting crushed as much as the other shirts were. And that's because it actually has an interlining, which I'll talk more about when I talk about the inexpensive shirts in a second. And when you have a flimsy collar, or collar collapse, as Ledbury calls it, it's actually much harder to fold over a necktie or a bow tie, but especially a necktie. So now that I finished talking about my 3 cheap business shirts over there on the other end, let's talk about my 3 more inexpensive business shirts that are now here closest to me. Let's start by talking about Charles Tyrwhitt's shirts, which are over here on the left. Charles Tyrwhitt's shirts start at $79 per business shirt, and they do increase in price just depending on the type of material and what you want out of the shirt. However, Charles Tyrwhitt does have a multi-buy deal where you can get 4 business shirts or polos for $199. Charles Tyrwhitt offers their shirts in 4 different fits: classic, slim, extra slim, and super slim. I personally have the most experience with slim fit because it gave me the most mobility here in my arms, though I'm not a fan of how big the waist is on me, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about Ledbury's shirts. Charles Tyrwhitt's collars are definitely much more proper than the stubby collars you saw over on the Calvin Klein and Kenneth Cole shirts. You can see that these stand a little taller here on the purple check shirts, the Prince of Wales check shirt here. This is their classic collar, which is much more of a regular collar when buttoned up, stands pointing right here in front. And here on the black poplin shirt, it is a spread collar, which has a much greater wingspan and actually floats out this way, like you're seeing here with my open shirt. And complimentary with every business shirt you get from Charles Tyrwhitt, you get a set of brass collar stays. Most sellers for under $100 would give you plastic stays. For someone to offer a brass stay, that's great. It's much more solid than a plastic stay, and it actually does provide a lot more stability. And while we're still on the topic of collars, as I alluded to earlier, all 3 of these 4, if we're counting this one, all of these shirts have an interlining in them, preventing them from ridiculous collar collapse. This one has a softer interlining than the Ledbury shirts do, but this one is definitely much harder to have a collar collapse in the back of the shirt with your tie. Though, also, because the collars are taller, both in front and in back, your tie is less likely to pop out so easily, and you won't have to spend a lot of time finagling the tie either underneath your collar or getting your collar over your necktie. 2 more points to make. I'll start with a negative point. The negative point that I have for Charles Tyrwhitt shirts is that they are still, not only is it full in the waist for their slim fit, but the sleeves are also a little on the larger side for me, both in the sleeve itself and the cuff. Now, the positive point I have to give about Charles Tyrwhitt is they have a 6-month guarantee. It is worthwhile to be able to take advantage of it if you are not happy with your shirt, either for quality reasons, fit reasons, or anything. Just as long as your shirt isn't destroyed, you should be able to make a return or exchange claim through them. And the last ones we're going to talk about are my 2 Ledbury shirts, specifically their Essentials Collection shirts. And why do I specifically say their Essentials Collection shirts? This is their collection of dress shirts, American company, keep that in mind. This is their collection of dress shirts that they offer under $100. You don't see that with most of their other shirt offerings. If it is, it's probably because it's on sale. And the reason why I want to be particular towards the Essentials collection is because the price to value, in my opinion, is the most worth it. So what is that price to value? Well, what is the price, first and foremost? As far as I know, all of their Essentials collection shirts, unless they're on sale, are $98 per shirt. Though before I get into the quality reasons and talking specifically about my Ledbury shirts, I want to bring up a point I just mentioned in my last video when I compared the Allen Edmonds and Alden shoes. Sometimes in order to achieve quality, you have to have less sales or no sales at all. Ledbury does have sales every so often, but I see them a lot less than Charles Tyrwhitt, which has a site-wide multi-buy deal, and I can't much speak for Men's Wearhouse anymore since I stopped buying them in 2020. Now, compared to Charles Tyrwhitt, Ledbury only offers 2 different fits of shirt. They have their classic fit and they have their tailored fit. Classic fit, once again, much more full size shirt. So if you don't have an athletic build, for lack of a better term, then a classic shirt is still good. I would consider recommending tailoring the shirt if it is still too big for you. And then Ledbury has their tailored fit shirts, which is actually what I have from both of my Ledbury shirts. Personally, I like having the full chest because it gives me ample room here, but to top it off, they actually have a much more cut waist than the Charles Tyrwhitt shirts you'll see. So if I were to show you the shirt here, you can see the Charles Tyrwhitt shirt. Here's the waist, right around the stomach. Now compare that to the Ledbury shirt. It already looks like a lot less fabric is being used. In addition, it would also look like I have a lot more fabric around my natural waist, because Ledbury's armholes are actually the most closely cut armholes out of all of these shirts that I have that I own. So with that, if I were to raise my arms, it's not like my shirt's tails are going to pop out of my trousers ever. If a dress shirt pops out of your trousers, that's probably because the armhole is too big or the dress shirt is just straight up too short. But it's likely for the former reason than the latter. Moving into talking about the collars, this definitely has the stiffest collar of the bunch, which I'm actually very thankful for, which is actually very nice when I work with my neckties. This has a mid-spread collar, or now Ledbury is saying that this is their quintessential collar, which is still a mid-spread collar. I do like it because it's not as wide open as a spread collar, or it doesn't point as forward as a classic collar per se. And the best thing I feel about Ledbury shirts is that they use mother of pearl buttons. Like you can tell, and they actually say it on their website that they use mother of pearl. Compare that to the other 5 shirts use plastic buttons. Even Charles Tyrwhitt uses plastic buttons. Is that inherently a good or bad thing? Absolutely not. It's just up to you as to what you prefer. I do like the mother of pearl buttons, especially here on this white shirt. You can't really notice the buttons. You might if you look close enough, but you don't notice it that much. Now, the only downfall, in my opinion, of Ledbury: plastic collar stays. Why? I get it. They are cheap to produce, but you guys make such quality shirting that you couldn't have spent just a couple more dollars to do something like a metal collar stay. And this leads us into my final thoughts for today. For me, I made it pretty poignant just a second ago. For me, if I can spend $98 to get a shirt that's already tailored to my body, and I don't need to do jack diddly squat in order to get this shirt to fit me properly, why would I not spend $98 to get Ledbury's shirts? Again, I'm still going to critique them over using plastic stays, which also are actually slightly wider than your typical collar stay. I would say that these are as wide as an INC shirt that I had bought however long ago from my local Macy's. Now, I'm still not going to knock Charles Tyrwhitt over their options. I actually prefer Charles Tyrwhitt for the amount of options that they have. And let's actually take a quick look at the amount of options that they have. The nice thing about being a Charles Tyrwhitt customer is that they do send you a catalog almost monthly, if not monthly. And if we take a look at all the options that they have, I mean, yes, of course we're in summer. They're going to be talking about summer shirting, but look at how many options they have. Now, of course, we're in suiting, but granted, they have a lot of different shirt options and a lot of different fabric options compared to Ledbury, where it's like you might have 2 or 3 different fabric options for a specific type of shirt, especially when it comes to their essentials collection. Again, I'm not a fan of how spacious their cuffs are, but I do plan on getting this shirt at the very least tailored, and I will report back in time to see how that changes my perspective on Charles Tyrwhitt shirts. And I'll make one last point on Men's Wearhouse. I still won't stop you from going there if you just need something quick and easy. For me, because I've hated the collar collapse over all my years of performing, of me wearing neckties, the collar collapse is really the one thing I just can't stand any longer. For me, the stubby collar, in addition to the collar collapse, is like the one chore that I never liked about wearing my dress shirts. Now, for something like my Tyrwhitt shirts and my Ledbury shirts, these don't collapse, and even if they do, these keep their shape so nicely that it's just gonna pop over easily. That and the collar height is actually a little more appropriate to hide a necktie. And one more time, comparing it to saxophones. For me, as someone who values my career, am I going to want to spend $2,000 every 5 years to get a brand new student saxophone? Or am I going to want to spend $6,000 to get a saxophone that can last me 30 years or longer? After 15 years, I've already spent $6,000 on 3 student saxophones versus $6,000 for 1 saxophone. And that saxophone hasn't even come close to needing a major repair. And since we're on the topic of value, the price per use, the shirts. Am I going to spend $50 on one shirt that I will have to consistently buy every 2 years? Or am I going to spend $100 on a shirt that's going to last me 5 to 10 years? I would much rather spend the money on one shirt that will last me 5 to 10 years, even if I have to spend a little more money on it, seeing as if I'm wearing the shirts just the same amount, I will get a much longer life out of the one that cost a little more. Granted, you have to know exactly what you're getting. If you're just getting something because the price is higher, that doesn't inherently make it any better than a shirt that is cheaper. So thank you for joining me in today's video. If you liked it, please drop a like. And if you want to see more style videos, a music performance video maybe, or if I decide to post a vlog, see one of those, hit that subscribe button below so you will be able to see my content in the future. And to all you fathers out there, happy Father's Day. And for all of you father figures out there, happy Father's Day to you too. I hope to see you all in my next video, and I will catch you all soon. Take care, everyone. Once again, happy Father's Day.